The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Wednesday, the 3rd of February, 2016, are currently trading with gold at $1,138.10 an ounce, silver $14.63 an ounce, Texas crude $29.88 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 370 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1966, the Luna 9 Russian spacecraft became the first unmanned probe to achieve a soft landing on the moon, or any other planetary body for that matter. Also known as the YE-6, number 13, it was the first probe to transmit photographic data to Earth from the lunar surface. In recent news, Sandra Merritt, one of the two indicted with tampering with governmental documents in order to create fake driver's license in a plot with anti-abortion activists to obtain the undercover video footage exposing Planned Parenthood for selling human body parts, turned herself into Texas authorities today. She posted her $2,000 bond and was later released. However, the news conference that she was scheduled to hold afterwards was canceled. David Daleiden, the main activist behind the videos, plans to turn himself over to authorities tomorrow, as attorneys have stated. He does ironically face an additional misdemeanor charge related to the purchase of human tissue. Ironic because, if you recall, a grand jury in Houston, Texas, that had been tasked with looking into the wrongdoing by Planned Parenthood announced that it was indicting Daleiden and Merritt instead. The results for the Iowa caucus are as follows. For the Republican Party, Ted Cruz, 8 delegates, or 27.7%. Donald Trump, 7 delegates, or 24.3%. Mark Rubio, 7 delegates, 23.1%. Ben Carson, 3 delegates, or 9.3%. Rand Paul, 1 delegate, 8,481 votes, 4.1%. Officially, Rand Paul did drop out this morning, stating the lack of funds and support as his main cause. Jeb Bush, 1 delegate at 2.8%. Carly Fiorina, 1 delegate, 1.9%. And John Kasich, 1 delegate at 1.9%. For the Democrats, it was actually decided by a coin toss which gave Hillary 6 wins out of 6 tosses. Hillary Clinton got 23 delegates and Bernie Sanders 21 delegates. This has been your lowdown for February 3rd, 2016.
No one had a bad trip. It was all very good. No one had a bad trip. It was all very good. Nope. It was all very good.
And good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're listening to us on the nationally syndicated Logos Radio Network. And you'll be joining us for the next 3 hours on Be Brave Radio. I'm Leland Freeman.
I'm Elizabeth Egan Everett.
I'm John Bush.
And today, like every show that we've had so far, we have an incredibly stacked lineup. At the bottom of the hour, we're going to be bringing in Illuminati researcher Frater X to talk about all kinds of things that will blow your mind. And we have as our special guest host today to help interview Frater X for about 90 minutes, Chris from The Crypto Show, 8 to 10 p.m. It was 8 to 10 p.m. Sundays and Wednesdays on the Logos Radio Network?
Yeah, every Sunday and Wednesday, 8 to 10 p.m. Here on Logos Radio Network. You can also catch us on Let's Talk Bitcoin, the Liberty Radio Network, and
thecryptoshow.com.
Cryptoshow.com. You can live stream it. I can't remember our other network, but you can check it out and figure it out on our website.
I got to sit with in on the Crypto Show this past Wednesday with this amazingly insane or insanely amazing interview with John McAfee.
Oh, that was great.
Oh, my. You either go to thecryptoshow.com
thecryptoshow.com
or logosradionetwork.com.
Preferably thecryptoshow.com, but you can find it at both spots,
to get the archive.
And for those that can't see Chris's beautiful face today in the radio audience, he's rocking some Wolverine-esque munchops, looking very sexy and very manly.
And if John upsets me, he'll see how I'm rocking my Wolverine adamantium claws.
Later in the show, we'll also have Dr. Laura Presley in studio to talk about election integrity. But before we get to that,
or lack thereof.
Yes, we're seeing an awful lot of that right now, aren't we?
And before we get to that, let's talk about the week that was. Let's first talk about the giant elephant in the room, the Iowa caucus. Elizabeth?
Well, I mean, I think we're all getting pretty aware that the shenanigans have started early, and all kinds of dirty tricks from left, right, and center, not only from the Democrats, but from the Republicans. We've got the amazing coin toss.
Coin toss.
Sorry, good morning.
I'm feeling it too.
Actually, a coin toss is actually more plausible than those 6 coin tosses.
Well, exactly. Isn't it something like, I mean, she won in, 6 different tosses where it went to her. And so there's obviously some cheating going on there. And then we have the cheater. And then the Cruz campaign also is at the moment with the little report that came from CNN. Now, mind you, Rubio did also do it as well because they tried to bury Ben Carson. So there's an awful lot of junkage going on already early on. Like, I mean, this is fun. The party's just getting started, isn't it?
It's almost like it's a total facade and illusion.
Thank you. I didn't want to say it, but I think it's all theater, but that's just my opinion.
No, it is.
But insofar as it is theater, we still have to pay attention to some of this stuff, I guess.
Well, they're selected, not elected.
Exactly.
Let's go over the results real quick. The Republican side, Cruz won the caucus, 27.6%, followed by the good old Donald Trump. Everyone's favorite fascist, 24.3%, and then Rubio placed third, 23.1%, and the top 3 contenders are actually pretty close there. That's pretty significant.
Well, that's because of Microsoft, actually. Some say that Cruz only won because of a certain little blip that occurred with Microsoft taking care of Rubio. And remember, Microsoft is one of the second highest donors for Rubio. They are now pushing him forward.
And they give a lot of money to the Clintons.
If that had not happened, and if you really research the fact that so much electronic voting has for a long time been mucked around with, and there's a great documentary that shows that called Hacking Democracy. And also you can watch on YouTube even court testimonials where they show and they speak about how easy it is to hack the system like that.
Well, that's just a ridiculous conspiracy theory. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, sorry. All crazy. Yeah.
We have a book at Brave called Hacked as well that goes over that. Ben Carson got 9.3%, and he probably lost a significant amount of percentage points because of the trickery. And that trickery was Ted Cruz tweeting out, one of Cruz's campaign people tweeting out that Carson was bowing out, which ended up being disinformation, deliberate misinformation.
It was a play on words. It wasn't directly saying bowing out. He was saying he was going home to Florida during Iowa and New Hampshire. Pretty much what they said. What you just said.
Rand Paul got 4.5%, and he's now grayed out because he did respectfully bow out. Another person that bit the dust was Huckabee, and I'm pleased that Jeb Bush, the guac bowl salesman. If you're familiar with the Stuff the Trump videos, everyone's like, what do you mean guac bowl? He has this like $30 guacamole bowl that you could buy in exchange for a donation. Stuff the Trump has this funny thing where it's like, you foolish guac bowl salesman.
And then he's also doing the whole friendly tortoise thing.
Yeah, he's handing out tortoises as little gifts to people. And he also, it was so sad. In one of his last lectures, he actually asked the audience to please clap.
Please clap. It was pathetic.
Please.
It's interesting. The tortoise was the symbol of the Fabian Socialist Society. I just want to throw that out there. But anyway.
And one of his super PACs actually put out an ad with George W. Bush asking people to vote for Jebby in the primary.
They're desperate.
Well, and they're also paying audience members about $25 a head to actually come and sit in the audience. Now, mind you, he's not the only one that's doing that, though. They actually supposedly all are, that they hire the audience to potentize their numbers.
Our good friend Ian Chaffee up in New York City actually posed as a Republican candidate and called up this firm that he suspected was doing that. And they gave him the whole lowdown on how much it costs and how often they do it. And they said, we're actually working with the big presidential campaign right now. And I think it was Jeb Bush.
Well, it's actually, it's across the board. It's the same thing as you will find with all of them, that they'll usually have somebody faint within the lecturing, like they'll just so that they show some sort of form of vulnerability and everybody feels compassionate for their lovely, lovely candidate.
They did that with Obama during his campaign. I remember that.
He does it at every single lecture, and you'll see a deliberate one where they stick a pregnant chick right behind him, and there's a handler that's literally extremely obvious with her cues, looking to the guy in the audience like, now, and then she hits the pregnant chick behind Obama, and then suddenly Obama, without even turning around, suddenly goes, oh, you okay? As she starts to faint. I mean, the whole thing is so
perfectly staged,
so obvious.
On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton won by a very slim margin, 49.9 to 49.6. That's 0.3 percentage points, winning 23 delegates, with Sanders, good old socialist Sanders,
$15 minimum wage,
getting 21. So I think that's pretty impressive for Bernie Sanders, who's at least has the semblance of being an outsider, going toe-to-toe with the Clinton machine. He may win New Hampshire. I think that'd be exciting to see Clinton just completely get smashed out.
I think there's a populist sentiment on both sides with Sanders and Trump, where it's just you have the mass population of the country just fed up with, and they think that these guys are anti-establishment.
He's just another Trojan horse. He's backed by billionaires. I mean, look at MoveOn. Look at who funds MoveOn. I mean, that's the thing that disappoints me so deeply about several of my friends, especially over on the West Coast, is that they're just not waking up to the same shenanigans that's been occurring with the way it happened with Obama.
It's a process. They'll be way more enlightened when he gets destroyed or when he gets opted out or when they voter fraud him out. Then they'll be like, wait a second, what's going on? And then they'll join the dark side of anarchism.
Yeah, but I mean, here's this guy saying, well, if I'm elected, I'll take care of TPP. It's like, why haven't you been against it already? Why haven't you done anything yet? Oh, you're saying that once you get elected, you'll do something? Oh, yeah, that's the way Obama was as well. Before he was elected.
From the dark side there is.
But Obama was like that too. You know, he was like, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to shut down Guantanamo. And then, are you kidding me? As soon as he walked over and became president, he changed.
Well, you look at their votes as senators. The fact that Obama did not partake in a lot of key votes that he campaigned on. Same thing with Ted Cruz. Most recently, the audit the Fed bill. He was absent because of the whole Goldman Sachs connection with Ted.
Yeah.
Is that also so that he can't be pegged down on some of those votes, and that way it's easier to like sell a certain campaign
image?
A certain image, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, it's interesting. Roger said this week in a radio interview that Ted is actually in bed with the Bushes. He was the one who got John Roberts recruited for George W. Bush.
His wife is former CFR in Goldman Sachs. That's all I need to know. And he did a photo op with Henry Kissinger. I mean, come on.
The Kingmaker.
There's no bigger insider than Ted Cruz, one way or another. So
yeah.
What do y'all think about Rand Paul dropping out? Who do you suspect a good chunk of his support will go towards? The Cruise Master, Trump, or will they become anarchists?
Except Ron Paul. Anyone who's paying attention, though, Ron Paul literally, I believe it was yesterday, actually came out and inoculated that dynamic because he actually came out and made a public statement saying Ted Cruz is not your libertarian candidate. Yeah. He is deeply, deeply owned by the establishment. So Rand's father came out and said, no, don't go that way.
But still, I think...
What I find interesting is that both Rand and Ron campaigned for Ted Cruz back in 2012 when he ran for Senate. It's kind of interesting.
They're all a bunch of dorks at the end of the day. They sway. Even Ron Paul, if you remember, maybe here in Central Texas, you received a letter, as I did, with Ron Paul back in 2009, I think it was, asking his supporters to throw their weight behind Lamar Smith, who's like a 26-year incumbent, voted for both bailouts, Iraq War, Patriot Act, all sorts of NSA stuff. And it's all just a total fraud.
And at the end of the day, we do have to wonder if there is a little bit of controlled opposition. I remember I was really, really big on Ron Paul many years ago. I really thought he was our savior. I thought he was going to step on in. And then I saw certain very interesting subtleties. He would do these simple Masonic signs, in very key moments. I remember he'd throw up the Cornudo.
Cornudo?
The Cornudo sign. And it's not because he's a Longhorns fan.
What's the sign? Explain to them what that sign is.
So the Cornudo sign is a very profound, we call it a mudra. Yeah, and it's the way you shape your hands to dial in certain voltages, per se. They've been used for thousands of years. Now, the Cornudo sign has been used. You can see it often, when someone's like, rock and roll, yeah.
Well, and the reason you even see it in rock and roll is not because it became a random trend, but because a lot of old rock and roll and metal bands were into Aleister Crowley and occultism, and so they spread it through their fans. So, like, when you see an older person like Ron Paul doing it, I doubt it's simply like him just using it as a greeting. I mean, I don't know.
No, you're spot on, because you'll actually find that many of the guys that are all in the club, per se, all are doing that. And it's actually, the Cornudo is actually an older mudra, which is actually Tibetan, which is called the Karana mudra.
Very interesting.
Like Quran, am I right? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, perhaps we'll discuss that in a moment.
Freighter.
Yeah.
And we are coming to the end of the first segment. This is the Logos Radio Network and Be Brave Radio. Logos Radio Network, of course, is truly user-supported, or listener-supported radio. So pay attention to our sponsors. They are what keeps Logos up and running. We don't get any government grants or any payouts from the Clinton Foundation, as well as a LogosRadioNetwork.com. We're having a pledge drive. Fundraiser. It's our yearly fundraiser for the Logos Radio Network. Prizes are from Central Texas Gunworks. There's a Spikes lower receiver, and then the second prize is a Taurus curve, and prizes also from My Magic Mud. So stay tuned to Be Brave Radio here on the Logos Radio Network. We'll be back right after this.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Welcome Welcome back. All you out there in Radio Land, whether you're listening online at logosradionetwork.com or you're tuned in to one of our grandest, most amazing affiliates out there, 89.1 FM TXLR, still rocking and rolling here in Austin, Texas, over like 7 or 8 years with all sorts of ups and downs, but we're so grateful to the folks that are keeping 89.1 on the air. Maybe you're tuned in as you're cruising around this wonderful, beautiful Saturday afternoon in Austin, Texas. This is the Be Brave Radio Show. We're broadcasting out of Brave New Books. You can come visit us at 1904 Guadalupe Street, Suite B, just underneath the Chase Bank, undermining Chase Bank and all of the banks in more ways than one. Even though we accept credit card payments and pay processing fees to the man, you can pay in Bitcoin. And yes, Bitcoin is preferred. We all do what we can, ladies and gentlemen.
But we also accept Amex.
That's right. Speaking of Bitcoin, I want to invite everyone to check out a podcast that I recorded recently. I interviewed Roger Ver, a.k.a. Bitcoin Jesus. He is one of the big Bitcoin luminaries, and he's also a voluntarist and anarchist and wonderful proponent for the cause of liberty. He spent some time in prison as well. He ran as an LP candidate, and he was up on stage railing against the ATF, and there was ATF agents in the audience, and they went ahead and taught him a lesson and put him in jail for a year. So rather than be held down by the man, he decided to expatriate and move to Japan. And along the way, he became very wealthy in Bitcoin, and he's sharing that wealth and sharing his love for the cause of freedom in Bitcoin.
And real quick, if I may interject, speaking of expatriation in Roger Ver, he will be at this year's Anarchapulco, a second annual anarcho-capitalist conference in Acapulco, hosted by Jeff Berwick. And you can go to anarchapulco.com to learn more about the guests. It's from February 19th to 21st. And there's some sort of extracurricular activities before and after that. And if you use the discount code crypto, you can get, I believe, 10% off of tickets. So check that out.
Take advantage. Danny Sessom will be there too.
And before we get back to the week that was, Be Brave Radio is brought to you by Brave New Books, Nature's Pure Organics, Hill Country Home Improvement, Burke Superfoods, and Cabo Bob's Burritos, with 2 locations in Austin, Texas, on Ben White Boulevard down south, and up on the North Drag. Was it just off Guadalupe?
Just off Guadalupe.
They have these amazingly large burritos where they actually make the tortillas on site, and their soda machines have drinks that have all cane sugar based.
Only sugar.
And do we still have buy one get one free coupons here at the store?
Chris just let the cat out of the bag. There's a small chunk of buy one get
only
one free.
Brave New Books.
I was trying to hoard some of them, but if you come in and ask for them, we will most certainly get you them, and we'll get more from Don Brinkman, who's a big supporter of the show. So listen to the podcast with Roger Ver. You can go to sovereignbtc.com. And I want to thank one of our new sponsors for the podcast. I'll be sharing about it. It's KeepKey, keepkey.com. It's a little physical device that holds your private keys. And they sent us one. I can't wait to unbox it and try it out and share with the world how that works to keep your coins safe.
And I do believe there's another very special discount going on at the moment at Brave New Books.
There's a very special discount that's actually got us quite a bit of press.
Yeah.
That wasn't intended, of course.
Interesting.
But we'll take it.
We will take it. It's actually global press, which is cool. So as many of you know, on January 1st, was it January 1st? The law changed?
January 1st, HB 910, licensed open carry, went into effect.
You can now open carry. First, you got to ask permission, of course, but hey, that's no big deal. Actually, it is a really big deal, but it's better than not being able to open carry. You can open carry in Texas if you're licensed a CHL holder.
Oh, now LTC, licensed to carry handgun.
Licensed to carry. Got to keep us honest here, Leland. And basically what we offered was 10% off anything in the store to anyone who comes in and safely, I emphasize safely, recognizing the 4 firearms rules, safely carries their firearm into the store. We'll give you 10% off anything because we want to celebrate your decision to take responsibility for your own defense and security. It's a very brave and very sovereign thing to do. So we put out a press release, and we also held an open carry symposium, which was very well attended. Lots of armed people in one bookstore, and wouldn't you know it, it was the safest place in Austin. We had the symposium. Michael Cargill spoke. Leland hosted a panel of activists. Stephen Sheftal went over the 4 firearms rules, which if you're coming down to the store carrying, I'm just going to review them real quick. Always treat your firearm like it's loaded. Never point it at anything that you do not intend to destroy. And that's where you get the laser rule. Assume that your firearm has a laser on it. And if you cross that laser across anyone, you fail the rule. The third rule is to know your target and anything behind it. If you're at the store and should you need to pull the firearm out of the holster, which hopefully you never will, make sure you're not just firing willy-nilly and my kids are sitting there behind where you're targeting. Wait till the robber takes a couple steps to the left or right away from people. And then the 4th firearm rule is, I already said, assume it's loaded. Know what's behind it. Keep your finger off the trigger at all times unless you're ready to pull it. And the firearms rules are designed to where if you screw up on one of them, so long as you're following the other 3, you can still avoid a catastrophe. So follow those 4 firearms rules if you're coming down to my store, or we will ask you to leave. So we put out a press release, and it got covered by KView here in Austin, which was pretty cool. Austin Bookstore offering 10% discount to open carriers. And from there, it got covered in all sorts of other places, and it went so far as London, England. We got picked up in The Guardian. And if you look at the comments, the Brits aren't very pleased with what we're doing there because they have been de-weaponized.
Drinking the Kool-Aid?
Yes, drinking the Kool-Aid, the statist Kool-Aid. So we got picked up by The Guardian. That was a great article.
Truth About Guns also picked up a lot in the comments.
Truth About Guns got us a lot of
Their
coverage.
comments were, do you guys sell Brave New World? Yes, we do.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
And then somebody else, MP Books, Melville House Books, covered a story, and they covered it from a little bit more of a left perspective, thinking that it was just a big PR stunt. But then they pointed out that in our defense, we did hold this symposium to educate people about it. But a lot of people don't get it. They also refer to me as a one-time Tea Partier, and they link to a video where we held this Austin Tea Party, which was Texans for Accountable Government's version of the Tea Party. I don't like the label. I'd rather them say he once leveraged the Tea Party to further the cause of liberty, but that's okay. We'll take whatever press we can get. And we did get a call the other day, right before Elizabeth was leaving, from a Vietnam veteran who seemed a little perturbed that we were open carrying. I wasn't able to take the call at the moment, but I did call him back and used some nonviolent communication with the gentleman and ended up talking to him for a good 20 minutes and helped to ease some of his concerns and talk about open carry and why it actually creates a safer environment. He felt like he was nervous about it and how are we going to tell the good guys from the bad guys? And I told him, well, basically, you won't be able to tell. But at the end of the day,
neither can the bad guys, in a sense.
Neither can the bad guys. That's right.
Yeah.
And there's no Wild West taking place. And in reality, it's also a myth that the Wild West was that wild when it came to the firearms and stuff. In large part, there was a lot of order, and people were kept in check by the presence of the firearms. So
yeah, economist Bob Murphy, by the way, in his book, The Politically Incorrect Guide to American History, I believe, talks about that. So just FYI.
Well, isn't there a quote that says an armed society is a polite society?
Is that Heinlein or L. Neil Smith or something like that? Yeah,
that's
so
pretty obvious.
Come on down to Brave New Books, open carry your firearm for a limited time. We'll give you 10% off anything in the store, and we'll talk shop because guns are cool, guns are good, but be safe with them.
Yeah.
Don't forget those 4 firearm rules.
Respect.
Emphasize that. Nobody come in willy-nilly going crazy. So
you like that phrase, willy-nilly?
Have I said it a lot? Willie Nelson.
Am I right?
So thanks to all the people that are covering that there at the store. Oh, we also now carry firearms accessories courtesy of Central Texas Gunworks. So you can come in and get yourself a holster or some headphones so you don't blow your eardrums out when you're shooting your AR or your shotgun.
Or a cleaning kit.
Or a cleaning kit. So come check us out. What else we got?
Let's see. And then the 2 minutes for the break. I guess let's finish up what we were talking about in the first segment with the election fraud.
Election fraud.
Well, and how about that interesting, perhaps a bit of schooling that Trump received with the emergency landing that he had to recently have happen with his jet. Now, well, so perhaps it's just an accident, a coincidental. The timing is rather interesting, but you'll also note that this also happened to Ron Paul back in 2008, and Ron Paul absolutely changed his tune in how he ran, how he spoke. He wasn't so attacking of the other candidates afterwards. Some also say that the same kind of dynamic occurred with Ross Perot. So this is interesting. Now, I don't know. I'm not going to immediately assume that he is being schooled or taught a lesson, but I think it's interesting, fascinating.
It's possible.
It is possible.
You can't put it past the elite and the puppet string pullers these days. The truth is stranger than fiction, for sure.
After all that the Clintons have actually done, I mean, the years of junk that they've gotten up to, all the dead bodies, something like 23 bodies or something at this point.
Who knows how many
23?
more during the
Only?
presidency?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just this, along with so many other topics, such as all the mind control that's going to be taking place during the Super Bowl tomorrow. We're going to bring up.
Is it tomorrow?
It is tomorrow. So this is perfect that we have Frater X coming on at the beginning of the next segment here on Be Brave Radio.
Well, it's a big mega ritual. It's something to hone everybody's mindset and intentions towards. Right now, we've just gone through what's called Imbolc, which is an ancient pagan holiday.
Oh yeah, Groundhog's
It's all
Day.
about bringing forth Mother Earth from her shell, from hibernation, and basically, yes, we'll learn more about that later.
And this is Be Brave Radio here on the Logos Radio Network. I'm Leland Freeman.
John Bush.
Chris Nenadal.
Elizabeth Egan-Everett.
And we'll be back after this short break.
This fruit is a favorite on American breakfast tables, but not if you're on prescription medication. Eating it can trigger serious side effects and even death. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, back to identify this potentially lethal fruit next.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
When you think of a healthy breakfast, oatmeal, yogurt, and grapefruit often come to mind. But Canadian researchers now say grapefruit can be dangerous for people on certain prescription medications, especially the elderly. When combined with antihistamines or blood pressure medication, grapefruit can lead to kidney failure, respiratory problems, intestinal bleeding, and even death. An ingredient in the fruit blocks an enzyme in the digestive system that breaks down drugs. When that happens, more of the drugs get into the bloodstream, sometimes at toxic levels. So if you're on medications, check with your doctor before biting into that grapefruit. It just might save your life. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
You're listening to the Logos Radio Network at logosradionetwork.com.
Welcome back to Be Brave Radio here on the Logos Radio Network. We're going to be bringing in Frater X shortly on the line for the next 90 minutes. And we're going to talk about all kinds of things, including what the fraud that's going on with the Iowa caucus, all the mind control that's going on when the Super Bowl, even crazy stuff that I've been hearing in the headlines where you have fast food workers breaking the glass of their restaurants because they got prank called thinking that they have a gas leak causing $40,000 damages and shutting down the and they want $15 minimum wage.
Well, that was a good Bernie impression.
Yeah, but when that happens, what they don't realize is that the elites say, fine, want that, but then we'll just replace you with robots. You know, they actually did that at Target where a bunch of people, they protested and said, fine, we're just not going to accept, the wages the way that you're presenting them to us. And they went, fine, you're fired. And, they brought in robots.
Well, they did that at McDonald's too. McDonald's being kind of the iconic place where people work for low wages.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because people don't understand why their wages are so low. It is in part because they are relatively unskilled. It's also in part because of the destructive effects of the Federal Reserve monetary policy and taxes and regulation. And people just, if you don't know the problem, your solution is probably going to be wrong.
Yeah.
So,
I think people are so busy trying to just survive right now that they're not able to do the real research that's really needed to see beyond the veil.
And it's hard. And I understand that. Like, it's not, I mean, even if you're even better off, it's hard to find the time to do that research, or to know where to look. So
it's gradualism. I mean, that's how they're doing it. I mean, with the Federal Reserve, it's been, 103 years since it was founded. Mm-hmm. And that's 4 generations of people that have lived through it. So they don't realize how much purchasing power they lost with their dollar, and things really were, in many regards, better.
Yeah. Sorry?
No, go ahead.
Well, I was also saying that also there is a dumbing down that's been happening over the generations, in what people are imbibing and what they consider to call food. That's not food. So much of what we see, in the grocery store, it absolutely has nothing to do with food. And they're calcifying their pineal glands, and they're literally not able to make the same connections that they used to be able to make to actually say, something's going on here. My spidey senses are telling me that I need to actually look elsewhere, use some common sense, which doesn't seem to be common anymore, and maybe think perhaps perhaps for myself, some critical thinking here, you know?
Yeah, well, you're right. They attack us on all fronts. They attack us with food and health. I mean, if you don't have proper nutrition, your brain is a physical organism. If its constituents are missing, then it's not going to function properly. So if you're malnourished because of bad food, if you've got chemicals in the water like fluoride that are causing brain damage, if you've got vaccines that are causing brain damage, on top of the public schooling, indoctrination, prison
That's
camps,
a big one.
all those in combination are obviously going to have a huge dumbing down effect.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because now suddenly we have in the news that the Zika virus, you know, and suddenly there's a vaccine that they've been testing for a year, but oh my gosh, you guys, suddenly something that's been around since 1947 is suddenly a pandemic. No, it's not.
And don't have kids for the next 2 years in countries that are affected by the Zika virus.
Well, welcome. Right? Well, welcome to population control. How perfect is that? You know, and then test out these new vaccines every 2 years. You'll notice that they do this.
Yeah.
There's before it was Ebola. Look, where's Ebola right now? Swine flu, SARS.
By the way, I want to just add real quick for those who are skeptics of vaccines. By the way, skepticism is one of the hallmarks of science. So vaccine skeptics are not ridiculous or anti-science. They're quite pro-science. But there is a vaccine court that is a separate non-judicial court that was set up by Congress in 1986. Has awarded over $1.8 billion in over 3,000 vaccine injury-related cases.
Yes.
And the taxpayers pay for this, not the pharmaceutical companies.
Yes.
So don't tell me that there isn't something fishy going on.
Don't tell me.
And what about the companies that are bucking the trend and trying to use non-GMO foods such as Chipotle? The fact that they've been hit with an E. coli pandemic, it seems more like corporate espionage.
That's literally the word I was just thinking
And the
of,
fact that there's a probe that's been opened up by the Food and Drug Administration. Who runs the Food and Drug Administration? The former head of Monsanto?
It's almost like the government's entirely criminal and corporate, and they're not working for the best interest of the people. They're working for the best interest of those in power. Man.
But Bernie Sanders told me otherwise.
Vote Bernie. Feel the burn.
Well, I'll feel the burn? Is that like needing some sort of form of Preparation H or something? I'll feel the burn when his hand is in my wallet.
Preparation H Raymond. Do you remember that?
And if he's all about really sharing the love, why isn't he sharing all of his campaign money with all the other the people running, right? Well, you should be sharing that money with all the other candidates.
And he's worth like $600,000. And that's how much is his wife worth?
That's not a lot.
That's more than most people.
That is nothing for a United States senator to be worth $600,000. He might as well be like on welfare. That is
but compared to the average person, and how much assets does he have off the books?
Thank you. I was about to say, come on, you're kidding. You're not buying that $600,000.
No, of course not. Absolutely, it's got to be bigger than that. Yeah,
no, he's loaded.
He seems kind of modest.
And then what about Hillary, where she's basically holding over everyone's head? You indict me, I know everything about Washington.
Okay, that's it, and that's why she has not been indicted yet. The very fact. See, this is the juicy bit, my friends, and Larry Nichols actually is really key on explaining this, and we got to keep that guy alive as long as possible. But here's the deal. She hasn't been exposed because when and if she is exposed, she will take down a huge chunk of Washington, including Obama. Now, see, here's what's interesting about this word apocalypse. There's a lot of people that are saying that we are in those times. That could also be engineered as well. Mind you, it could be a whole agenda thing. But what does the word apocalypse mean? It means lifting the veil. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, which means that we might actually, and we are, seeing behind the veil. We are seeing these little beasties being exposed for what they are.
Honestly, these politicians, they just need to fall on their sword and just do the right thing for the sake of this country. The Bengals said it best. More or less. The fact that Republicans.
I couldn't hear that at all. I like
you know that you're on a show with Leland Freeman when you hear a clip from the Bengals that he pre-prepped last night. A clip from the Bengals. This guy, gotta love him.
Be brave, radio.
But the fact that Larry Nichols even said Republicans are going to Obama and saying don't let her be indicted. She's got dirt on us. That's how scary it is. We got the mob boss mentality.
That's right. You're listening to Be Brave Radio every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Logos Radio Network. Or you can hear us over the airwaves in Austin, Texas on our favorite affiliate, 89.1 FM TXLR. We're broadcasting out of the underground here at Brave New Books, 1904 Guadalupe Street. Come and see us. Open carry safely. You can get 10% off anything in the store. We'll be right back.
Easy.
And welcome back to Be Brave Radio here on the Logos Radio Network. For a short technical delay, we have Frater X or Frater X. How's it pronounced, Frater?
Potato. I don't like to make it. I don't like to make people do any kind of pronunciation. I'm rebellious when it comes to grammar. Go ahead.
So I like Frater because it makes him sound like really big and awesome.
Before we get into all the topics at hand, can you give a little backstory for our listeners that aren't familiar with who you are and what your background information is and how deep down the rabbit hole you've actually journeyed?
Well, for the last 4 years, I've done a podcast on American Freedom Radio. I wrote a book called The Secret War Inside Freemasonry. I actually started looking at all this stuff around the same time as a lot of people, I think, that are now podcasters and bloggers in our whole true sphere back in the 90s. The 90s was like the age of enlightenment for Generation Xers, you know what I mean? I think a lot of stuff became available. We all sort of like synchronistically all turned to the same things, like, the books of Graham Hancock, Fingerprints of the Gods, the books of David Icke, Biggest Secret. I read The Underground History of American Education by John Taylor Gatto. All this happened in the 90s. I went into the Borders bookstores. I'd grab books, start reading, dog ear them, and then hide them on the shelves and come back the next day. Any book that, like, when I read David Icke's Biggest Secret, I was sitting in a puffy chair in Borders, reading it off the shelf, not buying the book. When I got done, I tore the bibliography out of the book and walked out of the store. I did the same thing to Vine Deloria's book called Creationism, Evolution, Creationism, and Other Modern Myths. I tore the bibliography out of the back. There were so many cross-references. Same with Underground History of American Education. I couldn't afford these books, so I just sat in the bookstore and read them. And anything like that blew my mind, like The Biggest Secret by David Icke, I had to know more. And Graham Hancock, he did a great job of kind of like indicating that there was this other culture, this other, civilization. He pointed to the civilization that time forgot. And he alluded to the idea that secret societies possess the remnants of the memories of the golden age of humanity. And I had to know more. And that sent me on the quest. And once I realized that we in America, when I woke up, like the little boy in The Emperor Wears No Clothes, who all of a sudden realized, what happened with JFK? I mean, what are all these false flag events throughout our history? And so I began the great lifelong project of to basically reverse engineering history, reconnecting and piecing together a meta history, which has led me to speak with you folks. Along the way, I found out my own family was deeply involved in secret societies going back for hundreds of years, if not thousands. And I found out that I was not only qualified, but possessed the aptitude to become qualified to get into these, like the Freemasons, and find out, go behind the lodge doors. And I got to say, this is Brave Radio, right? Be Brave Radio. I bravely knocked on the door because I was obsessed. I had to know what was going on. And, I come to you now to talk to you all about that, your listeners about that. And, I heard you say something about debunking things. I mean, I was the biggest skeptic, and still am, about a lot of stuff. But I'll tell you one thing. Aristotle said that the mark of an educated mind is one that can entertain notions even if you don't agree with them.
Thank you.
Well, that's huge. There's so many people that are so closed-minded that they just become static for decades at a time. And it's the open-mindedness and the ability to evolve that makes us human, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
So you were explaining that you learned that your family had a very long lineage involved with several deep secret societies, and I know that you have been involved in at least 9 esoteric societies. Here's my question. I know within my family and within other families, usually there's a very deep air of secrecy. I have known people that have actually been killed for speaking those secrets. I honor you coming forward and explaining all that you know. But I mean, haven't you been afraid for your life in speaking out this way?
You'd think so, right? But I think that I fall into a situation that I could best describe as marginalization. It's much easier to ignore and consider me a gnat and nothing. But through marginalization, I'm discredited just by. I was independently published. I mean, I don't have any promotion. I have no agent. I have no publishing house behind me. I'm just a guy, right? But I think if it took me out, that would just boost book sales, right? I mean, that would legitimize me more than anything. So I'm just left to kind of what I'm talking about, the way that I come at this was I discovered what I think is an interpretation of the mystery traditions, of the human birthright, of our legacy. That is what was taken from us probably 13,000 years ago when humanity was derailed. I believe it was the wake of some great cataclysm. Something happened really bad. I mean, big time bad. And it wiped out a whole bunch of stuff. And it threw our entire species into sort of a post-traumatic stress disorder, you know? And in that state, we were exploited. We were harvested. We were set on a path that has led us to this world we live in today, this world that's cultural oppression, genocide, evil, sinister forces driven by fear, war, and greed. That's what we're dealing with. And it's not our nature, people. This isn't what we're meant to be doing. This is not the best we could come up with. Clearly.
Are you talking about Atlantis, or are you talking about a different past society?
Earlier.
Oh, it's been alluded. It's been called Atlantis. I don't think they call themselves Atlantis. Lemuria. I think it's really interesting that Bacon wrote a book called The New Atlantis, right, about this American continent. And here we are today, almost mirroring what was described by Solon through Plato about Atlantis in the ancient works, where he talked about how we were so far removed from nature, so haughty and so like arrogant in our, display of globalism and warlike nature and all the things that Atlantis evolved into before its destruction. So it's remarkable to me, but I don't know. I just think it was a golden age of humanity that probably went back 100,000 years backwards, and then something happened to interrupt it. You probably like 10 to 13 to 15,000 years ago,
You touch on Bacon and the New Atlantis tract that he wrote that, like you said, people believe to have been about about America anyway. Do you think that the founders in the original colonists, or not all the colonists, but anyway, the founding fathers and those who started the colonies and everyone involved in the establishment of the United States, were they aware of this ancient society, and was it their goal, like in the New Atlantis, to reestablish it?
I absolutely think that there were people who were at the helm, who were guiding the navigators, or the navigators themselves, who were aware. These people were grid builders. They understand geomancy. Remember John Dee, the court astrologer of Queen Elizabeth. This is the time of Raleigh, Walter Raleigh and the other guys who were establishing the original colonies. These guys were equipped with understanding. John Dee mapped 91 parts of the earth and on a grid back in the 16th century. He was a medieval wizard, really, a sorcerer, and he basically worked for the Queen, and he imagined Britannia, the great empire of England that was going to rule the world. The sun would never set on it. So what does he do? He maps the entire earth in a grid, and then every crossroad, every point on that map, he identifies a crossroad, demon, and angel, which he then creates a sigil, a sound, a shape, and everything to conjure and evoke the power of this elemental being. And then he sends out these navigators are sent out, and where do they go? Where are the original power spots in the 13th colony? Philadelphia, for example, the birthplace of America, right? In Philadelphia, there's a grid crossroad of 6 or 7 ley lines. They all cross in Old Town Philly, right? The waterways, the ancient spot where the ancient people is called the Lenape, who were of the Algonquin nation. They had a spot that they called the most sacred spot in the world. And anything that was commenced on this spot, they said, would have the full participation of the earth. And guess what they did right there? They read the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Washington D.C., isn't it? The way that they've laid out the whole the Capitol building, the Bohemian Owl, and it's all the underground passageways,
the broken pentagram, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, there's all kinds of things, and then like the 33rd parallel for the original Supreme Council, House of the Temple in Charleston. This was on that parallel, and from that spot they watched the first shots fired at Fort Sumter at the beginning of the Civil War, which was. From my reckoning, this was like taking that military-industrial complex to the next level, and it ended up becoming what I would call the beginnings of what led to the MK Ultra mind control experiment of America. It's all connected. It's all, and then I did a video which was part of a presentation I did at the Free Your Mind conference, the second one in 2013, called "The Secret War on Human Consciousness." And that video you can watch on YouTube. It's also available in hard copy on my website. But you can watch, and I basically reconstruct the revised history of America, and through this, basically the revised military history of America, and show how every single conflict that we've had in every generation of America was led in by a false flag event. Every one of them, leading right up to our current war pattern. Every single one of them, every generation, a reinfusement of a fear factor. Some sort of fear-based false flag event to re-inoculate everyone with fear and keep them all willing to be mobilized militarily, right?
Absolutely.
And we'll pick up with that conversation at the top of the hour with Frater X and special guest in studio, Chris from the Crypto Show on the Logos Radio Network.
CryptoShow.com every Sunday, Wednesday, 8 to 10 p.m.
And this is Be Brave Radio here on the Logos Radio Network. I'm Leland Freeman.
Are you? Well, I'm Leland then.
I'm Chris Nenendal.
And I'm John Bush. Good laugh there. Thanks.
I'm glad you followed it up with the real one.
And this is Be Brave Radio on the Logos Radio Network. We will be back after the short news break at the top of the hour with Frater X and Chris from the Crypto Show. And welcome back to hour 2 of our 3-hour journey into the unknown on Be Brave Radio with Leland, John, and Elizabeth. We have for the next hour special guest Freighter X, as well as Chris from the Crypto Show joining us in for that. And Be Brave Radio broadcasts out of the fabulous underground studios at Brave New Books, and also brought to you by Nature's Pure Organics, Hill Country Home Improvement, Burke Superfoods, and Cabo Bob's. Let's just dive right into it. All the symbolism that happens during the Super Bowl pregame and halftime shows, all this patriotism that's rammed down your throat as you go through all these checkpoints in the stadiums, that you have no-fly zones, and the cities are basically, that host these mass events such as the Super Bowl and these award shows, turn basically into de facto martial law, and how they're just taking away freedom from us. Freighter, Chris, and Elizabeth?
Well, I mean, go ahead, Freighter.
Well, I was just going to say, it's clear. I know that a couple years ago they started using Facebook photo databases on the entrances to the Super Bowl. They're biometrically scanning people as they're walking in, and they actually apprehended 18 wanted suspects through law enforcement using 800 million photographs that have been compiled by everyone, ratting on each other and pointing, identifying each other on Facebook. so they can turn around and use it to apprehend people.
Yeah.
And that brings up definitely, sort of legal and constitutional problems, like with the Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure. Now, I know you're in public when this happens, but still, like, I don't think anyone expects your Facebook to be sort of sifted for biometric information, and it's terrifying, though. I mean, and fraud. I guess I kind of have a broad question related to this with the police state, with mind control and all that's happening. It's not, there's also ritual and occult aspects to a lot of this stuff. Are these necessarily separate things, or is there sort of a deeper connection between ritual, occult knowledge or techniques, and mind control and all this sort of stuff?
I think it's all. I think there's a definite thread that connects all of this. I mean, this is the reality of this. Is what has been the crazy realization, the aha moment comes when we go, wait a second. I mean, we're living in a culture, right, where just last year they reported statistically, you talk about the police state. The personal forfeitures to the police in 2015 exceeded $5 billion. That means people's private property was forfeited to the police over $5 billion. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Robbery and thievery was below $4 billion. So the police have exceeded the robbers in taking people's stuff. I mean, and then no one's even aware of this. That's surprising, I bet, to most people who hear me say that. But don't believe me? Look up the statistics. I mean, this is a world where we're being constantly assailed with fear-motivated coercion to surrender our only defense against total fascism, and coerced into believing that gun violence is on the rise. But yet, everybody listening, go to the U.S. Statistical Registry. Type in the gun violence statistics, and you will see that gun violence is actually down something like 50% since 1992, according to the statistics. Yet,
and that's when most states got carry permits, so you can legally carry a handgun.
Oh, really?
Exactly.
Yeah, it was in the early to mid 90s.
Exactly, and there was a slight spike in the statistics in 2003. There was a slight spike that went up a little bit and then came right back down to where it is now, which is something like 50-something%. Anybody can look this up. I'm just, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but in general, we're looking at a huge decrease in gun violence. Yet America is being convinced daily that they're coming right for us.
If you look at the backstory of Shannon Watts, the figurehead of Moms Demand Action, her real name is Shannon Trotchon or something like that, and the fact that she was a former communications executive with Monsanto as well as General Electric. So if you look at, it's not a coincidence that the people that want to give GMO foods and have the military-industrial complex are also the same people that want to get rid of our firearms.
Well, that's it. If you just keep peeling back the onion, Chris asked the pervasive question, is it all connected? I mean, you keep peeling back the onions, you look at the fact that even the simplest, most in-your-face, hidden in plain sight things, like, for example, everybody watched that original movie, Men in Black, and the big joke in the movie was Tommy Lee Jones picks up a National Enquirer. He's like, we got to get some intel. And Will Smith's like, what are you talking about? Right? But here's the funny tongue-in-cheek thing. The guy who founded the National Enquirer, his name was Eugene Pope. Like Pope, Pope John or whatever. Eugene Pope. He was in Army psychological operations before he founded the National Enquirer. So there's a big thing, big flag there. Another one, Henry Luce, who founded Life magazine, Time Life, and all that. His number one man was a guy named C.D. Jackson. C.D. Jackson actually purchased the Zapruder film and kept it out of circulation for almost a decade, until like 1972, I think it was. It was finally allowed to be viewed. But C.D. Jackson was in, I believe, CIA, or again, Army intelligence, psychological operations, before he went to work for Time and Life. And that's back then in the 60s. But, Leland just mentioned it. You look at all of our modern, what's his name? The white-haired guy, the Aryan newscaster there, who's on.
Anderson Cooper?
Anderson Cooper, exactly. There you go. Anderson Cooper, former CIA, quote-unquote former CIA.
You're never former, you never leave the company.
Right.
Current CIA.
Yeah, bloodline families, too. Now, that was another thing that, Elizabeth, you asked me about my fear of these things. Well, what I found out is my family, I'm one of the old Scottish clans that are in the books, like the Scottish clans and their Tartans, the ancient bloodline families. If you look up that book, the Scottish clans and their Tartans, those families in that book are the ancient bloodline families that, like Nicholas de Vere talked about in that book, Dragon Legacy. He actually contacted me from Wales before he was found mysteriously dead. He contacted me via the internet and told me, we've been watching you, and, you're one of us. And I was like, oh, okay. So I wonder, my speculation is maybe they leave me alone because they can't kill me. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yes. So does that go back to bloodlines that have connections either interdimensionally or off-planet to vampiric lineage?
Well, there's the other thing. The question was asked, what is this? What is this? Is it? I think it's multi-generational, transcending time and space as we understand it. We are engaged in what is called an elaborate global enchantment. We are literally under the influence of evil magical forces that are completely, the ancient Gnostics, you talk about shamanistic traditions. If you look at the first century Gnostics who laid down the works that are found in the Nag Hammadi library, they discussed, they through shamanism, through remote viewing, they gained insight and realization of all things, of the universe, of who we are, of where we come from, and where we're going. And they foresaw these things that are transpiring. But they understood that we were literally infested with some sort of outside pathogen, some sort of mind virus or parasite or, something that had infested us and had infected us and had literally taken over our consciousness, had created a false reality, which they called the stereoma, which was a false counterclock world. And they included the entire solar system in that illusion, like misdirection, like a magician on stage and we were all in the joke. We're all in the trick. We're all caught up in it.
Well, and I believe the native Indians have the Cree actually have another word for that, and that's Wetiko. And they believed that it was some sort of viral archon type force or set of beings that came in basically and infiltrated people's subconscious, their minds, their souls, their spirits, and in many ways infected them. And you'll see that a lot in our narcissistic society, the selfie world, the me. They call it malignant egophrenia, and some will say it's vampiric. There are many different names for it, but I think your explanation of it is just astonishing.
Let me ask as a related but sort of a tangential question. I'm sure you're familiar with CERN and the Large Hadron Collider, and I'm sure you're familiar with some of the theories surrounding that. What is your opinion concerning it? Because it just my take of it, and I'm no physicist, but when you look at all the symbolism surrounding CERN, CERN, Cernunnos, Apollo, it's located in a town named after Apollo.
Isn't the Vatican one of the major funders of CERN?
I've heard that, never confirmed that. And they talk about the physicists themselves openly talk about opening up other dimensions, recreating the Big Bang, finding the God particle, quote unquote. There's all these sort of occult and symbolic markers surrounding that place. What's your opinion on that? Are they trying to open up dimensions to let these archons or Anunnaki in, or what do you think?
Well, I think that there's Definitely. There's a lot of good research been done by our friend Freeman over at freemantv.com. That's somebody that everybody should check out if they haven't. He talks a lot about CERN. He reviews a lot of the different speculations there. But just off the cuff sitting here talking to you about this, my understanding of things is the people involved in this are involved in two things. There's a two-prong action going on here. One is the authenticating or validating of a false premise of physics and reality in order to reinforce the paradigm that's controlling us. That's the number one thing. So all actions and all activities involved in mainstream physics are leading us towards some sort of, see, here's the proof that explains all of our theories that are, I believe, false, that are misleading everyone down the wrong direction. But the other, more sinister maybe, or more practical experiment that I think is going on, and there's probably way more other experiments I'm just fully unaware of, but the other big prong action that's going on, I think, is leading us to complete and utter virtual reality, not unlike something out of a Philip K. Dick novel, where when they open up what used to be called in the Kabbalistic lore, the term was Sheol, Sheol, which means like a cul-de-sac, an interdimensional cul-de-sac. In the ancient lore of Jewish tradition, that's where the souls went and waited until the time when they would be reunited with Abraham's bosom, maybe, you know what I mean, depending on the situation. But it was sort of like a purgatory in Jewish lore called Sheol. And in this, so I'm in terms of Kabbalistic understanding, because remember, at the core of all this, remember we talked about the geomancers and the grid builders and these people are, whether you believe it or I believe it or not, they believe it. And that's all.
Frater, don't mean to cut you off, but we will pick this up at the end of at the beginning of the next segment here on Be Brave Radio on the Logos Radio Network with Leland, Elizabeth, John, and special guest Frater X and Chris from the Crypto Show. Stay tuned.
Now,
this is the Logos Radio Network.
And welcome back to Be Brave Radio here on the Logos Radio Network, syndicated across the country, including our wonderful affiliate, TXLR 89.1 FM here in Austin. I'm Leland. I'm joined by John and Elizabeth and special guest Frater X, as well as special guest host Chris from the Crypto Show, Sundays and Wednesdays from 8 to 10 on the Logos Radio Network. And let's just dive right back into what we were talking about. Hollywoodism, what happens during the Super Bowl halftime show? Are these celebrities basically being programmed and is used as sacrifices? The Disney connection. Guys, take it away.
Well, go ahead, Frater.
Well, I was just going to pick up when we were talking about Atlantis and the derailing of human consciousness. The point I was trying to make is we used to have an understanding about consciousness that we no longer do. We have ignored, like ignorance means to ignore the truth. We have ignored a huge slice of reality, of consciousness. Anything that's not provable by science, quantifiable or qualifiable, isn't real and isn't substantiated. Well, that's all well and fine, right? But what that really does for people who understand that there is a metaphysical reality, that the universe does adhere to certain symbols and allegories, that we can actually change reality through the changing of consciousness, through the controlling and manipulating of consciousness. People who understand that, think about that greatest scam in the world by making everybody believe something doesn't exist and then using that thing against them. And the Super Bowl is the boots on the ground, real time, perfect example of that. Because with like last year, it was how many million viewers watched the Katy Perry? It was 118.5 million viewers watching her riding a giant lion. You know what I mean? And it's so zodiacal, so hermetic.
On top of the Masonic checkerboard, adding was it icing on the cake?
But the checkerboard, that's the game of life, buddy. That checkerboard is the chessboard of life. The black and white squares, they represent the good and bad times of life, just like the Led Zeppelin song, good times, bad times. And so she's crossing it all, oblivious, riding this giant line, and it's like treading upon all of our little meager lives. But meanwhile, we're all watching. Everyone's eyes on this. And whether you believe it or not, it is manipulating your consciousness, literally downloading the new paradigm of, this is like a New Year's celebration. In the ancient times, when leaders took over a realm, the first thing they did was readjust what? The calendars, readjust everything, in ancient China, they would readjust the key in which all the instruments in the Imperium were officially tuned to, literally changing the sonic frequency. And
didn't they do that recently in the past several decades in America with
Is
the way
is that why music is so great these days?
No, stop.
Guys, we're doing it right now with psychoacoustics. They trick the brain into thinking you're hearing the full wave pattern, but MP3 file is not the full wave pattern. It's a trick. They're literally tricking the brain through digital psychoacoustics. That's what's happening right now. So when we hear a song, that's why when you hear a song on vinyl, it sounds so much better than a song on a CD, because the vinyl has all of the wave pattern in it, and the MP3 file on a CD doesn't. It's a trick, and your brain is being tricked. So if that can happen on just that, imagine what's happening with television, broadcasting, radio, broadcasting, internet, streams. I mean, it's constantly happening.
Wait. What the hell is vinyl?
It was before 8-track.
You're actually also talking about an even deeper subject, which is cymatics, which is creating the use of sound that actually creates matter. And many people believe that the pyramids were altered in that way, that Coral Castle was altered in that way. And people don't really understand that every word is a prayer. It's like there's a reason why for spelling, it spells, right? Every word creates and brings forth a manifestation of reality.
Then you brought us back around to the Kabbalistic way of thinking. Once again, at the core of Hollywoodism is Kabbalism and Hermeticism. And what is in Genesis? What happened at the beginning? Oh, in the beginning there was the Word, right? The Word was spoken, and all of creation manifested. The Kabbalists say that everything was a black box cube, and then the Word was spoken, and it popped open. And when it popped open, all of the universe expanded from it, right? But guess what, guys? The Word spoken even in the Masonic lore, when you get up into the higher levels, Yahweh, you know that? Yahweh, the Tetragrammaton. That is a formula. It is literally a word that is spoken. In the Masonic lore, you're given a secret word. It's a 3-syllable word in the 3rd degree. It's a substitutionary word because you're told the word is lost. Later on in the Royal Arch degree, you're given the word restored. The word restored is, again, a 3-syllable degree. Guess what it is, ladies and gentlemen? It's the word is the name of God. It's just a different interpretation of it, but that's what it is. So once again being brought around to is a Kabbalistic orientation. It doesn't matter as long as you're within that realm. It's like if you're an atheist or a Christian, it doesn't matter because you're still on the same playing board. You're one or the other. It's like one side or the other of the same paradigm. That's fine. You can be an atheist. We don't mind as long as you're recognizing there's Christians on the other side, and they'll recognize you as an atheist or a Satanist, as the case may be,
And quick question. I mean, it's so underappreciated how mass consciousness events like the Super Bowl, even 9/11, where people, millions and billions of people are watching. Or if you're listening to a CD, it may not be at the same time, but millions and billions of people will listen to popular CDs. Now, of course, everyone's heard of
popular music top 40 back in the day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, everyone's heard of backmasking, and I know Aleister Crowley talks about to be a proper magician, you do things backwards, including talking backwards. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't the name of Satan in Kabbalah Yahweh backwards? What's your take on the whole backmasking thing? Is it a real phenomenon, and what are its effects?
Oh, yeah, like Obama, yes, we can, and playing it backwards says,
Satan.
thank you, Satan. Exactly.
Totally. That's stuff. It's just like, okay, it's the strange, I think that literally things bleed through, that's why there's hope for humanity, ladies and gentlemen, because like the shamanic frequency, it persists, it intrudes, it bleeds through, whether people in power and control like it or not. And little things manifest. And the universe is literally sculptable and malleable. So on every level, backwards, forwards, up and down, seemingly illogically, farcical, absurdism, all these things are effective. It all works. It's all founded in belief and intent. It depends not on what is being done. It depends on why it's being done and what the doer believes. That's the point. So silly, crazy stuff. Like synchronicity. Synchronicity is a perfect example of the universe persisting. The universe is communicating with us on a totally different level that's beyond the powers that be, beyond the powers that shouldn't be, the power brokers. So little things happen that are just like, what the heck? That is such a crazy coincidence. Is it really? Or for example, our good friend of humanity, Dave McGowan, who wrote so many awesome books that people should check out, like Program to Kill or Wagging the Moon Doggy about the fake lunar landing, or the weird scenes inside the canyon, which is about the creation of the counterculture in America as an intelligence operation, as a deliberate way of leading an entire generation, like a Pied Piper, into the caves to be massacred, right? Well, guess what? Dave McGowan died. He died last year. He died last year on November 22nd at 12:47, literally 17 minutes after the JFK assassination. 1963. And it's just remarkable to me that he would die right then, because even I spoke with him. I knew him. We spoke a lot about the JFK assassination. It's just crazy to me that he died on that exact time like that. And it's really sad because we lost an amazing man in Dave McGowan last year. But to me, it's like almost like the universe was letting us know we can never forget. Don't ever forget. Yes. He died on that exact point to remind us always. The audacity of a government that would shoot its own president in front of the entire world and then shoot the would-be assassin on TV in front of the entire American public to usher in this new world order that we're living in today, you know?
As Jim Marrs says, a coup d'etat. I think talking in the next couple segments, we should talk about what celebrity programming, lack of integrity in the entertainment industry, and what happens when the celebrity programming fails. It breaks. And
MK Ultra.
MK Ultra.
Britney Spears shaves her head.
Or what's her face?
Miley Cyrus.
Not Miley Cyrus. Amanda Bynes.
Oh, bless.
So this is Be Brave Radio, brought to you by Brave New Books, Hill Country Home Improvement, Nature's Pure Organics, Burke Superfoods, and Cabo Bob's here on the Logos Radio Network. This is Leland, John, and Elizabeth, joined by Freighter X and Chris from The Crypto Show. We'll be back right after this.
In Japan, where pampering your dog is serious stuff, pet lovers can now keep track of every step their beloved pooches take. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, back to tell you about the latest in pet equipment, dog pedometers, in a moment.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
On weekends in Tokyo's Yoyogi Park, it's common to see women wheeling their dogs in strollers, dressed in frilly doggy attire. In case you didn't know, pampering pets in Japan is a national pastime. Now dog lovers have a new way to dote on their pets, a cloud-connected pedometer pendant that tracks each time Fido puts one paw in front of the other. The pedometer is strapped to the dog's neck and logs steps, shivering motions, and body temperature. Transfer this vital data to the cloud, owners, and their cell phones at the pendant. Monitoring pups with pendants? Pardon my Japanese, but I'd say sayonara to this trend. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
Beginning about chemtrails.
Live Free Speech Radio, LogosRadioNetwork.com.
Then when I get back on my feet again, I can climb so high that I won't feel low. And I keep on praying, baby, that when I get where I am going, you'll be showing me a blue sky road. Open my mind, no longer blind. I know I'm coming off the ground. And open my eyes, spread my
And welcome back to Be Brave Radio here on the Logos Radio Network. We've got Chris from The Crypto Show and Freighter X with us for another half hour. And what we're going to talk about this segment is programming of celebrities. Was it mind control?
Well, I
MK
think it's important that people, perhaps Freighter can explain it very well, take it more down to a foundational level of teaching people to understand the mass programming, not only that's been going on of the celebrities, but also has, it's been going on with the public as well. And I think he can probably explain it perhaps foundationally first.
Well, foundationally speaking, I once spoke with a gentleman who was co-author of a book called Transformation of America. That's Mark Phillips, the husband of Kathy O'Brien, who he claims he's former CIA. I don't know, but I met him and talked with him, and one of the things he told me was that he traveled to the Neolithic caves in southern France or on the Mediterranean, the ones where they have those handprints and ochre that are on the walls and the different depictions of what seems like hunts and ritualistic behavior. He told me that on the walls of those caves, the Neolithic caves, which go back tens of thousands of years or whatever, he said there was depictions of monarch-level MK Ultra mind control techniques that were being used by the CIA during his time in the company. And so this is the foundational level of it, ladies and gentlemen. And when what he was talking about was what is often referred to as like the mystery traditions or the Western mystery traditions, from however you want to term that. And the reason why secret societies and all of these occult orders are so significant, why it's important to understand this stuff, what's really at the core, it's not necessarily to teach yourself how to do it or to be somebody who gets involved in those things. No. It's important to understand what's at the core here is a technique of altering consciousness using sight and sound, all the senses, smell even, the burning of incense, the lighting of different colored candles and lights, the images that you portray by projecting them on walls or then in fact making them animated like motion pictures, the different subliminal messages that you can encode into every image and every phrase, multi-level sensory perception or perceptual experience. This is at the core of it. And so when you move forward, you find that, our entire culture was, the American culture, the shadow American culture, the images and values that have been projected by this Hollywoodism, a global religion on the cultural and, global level, a religion, Hollywoodism, reinforced by what? By capitalism, by consumerism. What is at the core of it all? Consumerism. So the people if you want to talk about mind control Hollywood celebrities, this is so important, ladies and gentlemen, because first of all, when you read books like Program to Kill by Dave McGowan or The Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, and then you couple that with another book called Ultimate Evil by Maury Terry, who talks about the Hand of Doom death cult and the Son of Sam killings and the connections there across the entire North American continent, a satanic cult that's, involved in, human sacrifice in order to evoke power. Whether or not you believe it's true or real, there is cosmic forces out there. There are cosmic forces out there. There is an actual system of making contact and evoking these powers that's out there. And people involved in media, in Hollywood, and in fame and in pop culture are compromised. They have to be. That's the only way you're allowed to persist, is if you allow yourself to compromise.
That if you have integrity, they basically kick you to the curb. It's not about the quality of the content, but it's about how much you're willing to be programmed. For example, Miley Cyrus, and as well as what happens on the programming break, such as Britney Spears, or even worse, Amanda Bynes.
Well, and I actually had a firsthand experience of that. I was in the music business for many years, most of my life, and I absolutely hit that ceiling. I was involved with a management group that is now one of the biggest management groups, across the planet. And as I was about to be signed by them, suddenly I was thrown very interesting comments and invitations that I actually had to walk away from.
Oh, wow.
They basically said, well, congratulations, but you do understand that we will use you in other ways.
Yeah, and I just want to add, too, if you look at the history of Hollywood and the entertainment industry, a lot of the major studios were founded by Freemasons or Kabbalistic Jews. And I'm not implying a Jewish conspiracy, but what I'm talking about is by people who are deeply involved in not just the occult, but the dark side of the occult. How popular Scientology is in Hollywood.
Don't get me started.
And Kabbalah.
L. Ron Hubbard was a naval officer, probably naval intelligence. He was friends with Aleister Crowley.
Jack Parsons.
And then, of course, you look at the CIA and Department of Defense involvement in Hollywood by their own admittance. If you, for instance, use a military aircraft, the Pentagon reserves the right to go through and edit the script of a Hollywood movie.
Yes.
So when you just look at the basic facts, it's not surprising that there is all of this control going on.
And you look at, a perfect example, you look when South Park lampooned Scientology. The Scientologists forced Isaac Hayes to walk off the show, and the fact that they even threatened Comedy Central so they didn't repeat it a few times that was supposed to be scheduled to be repeated, even though they lampooned everyone equally.
Well, South Park actually made history with that. I don't think people really fully understand is that people in Hollywood were afraid to speak out against Scientology, and South Park actually opened up the floodgates. Before that, people used to find rattlesnakes in their mailboxes. They used to have their toothpaste laced with LSD. I'm serious.
Wow,
they have a whole section in that cult called the Office of Special Affairs, and they do something called dead agenting. Dude, don't get me started about Scientology.
That could be a whole show in itself.
No, really, yeah.
She's a huge L. Ron Hubbard fan, in case you can't tell.
Cults are my favorite thing.
And I just want to add real quick, too, the ancient Greek word for sorcery was pharmakia, which basically meant drugs. And what do drugs do? Mm-hmm. They alter your consciousness and your physiology, right? And that was a big part of the MK Ultra mind control experiments. It's a big part of how directly or indirectly they control us.
And what happens when the programming breaks? Not Miley Cyrus. I keep saying Miley Cyrus.
Amanda
Bynes is the most extreme example.
And look at how celebrities.
Britney Spears. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Ryder, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't the one that was talking, but I was listening to both of you. But, I'm right with you. I think that the failure of the mind control works just as much as the successes, because the failures are often because they're being deliberately, imploded or self-destructed for some reason, probably because they're not being obedient to their keepers or handlers, But Hollywood, it was definitely founded by Jewish immigrants. I'm not trying to be, anti-Semitic here, but they all were born within a 500-mile radius of each other. The 6 studio heads who they ended up founding Hollywood within a 15-mile radius in Hollywood, but they all came from like Eastern European countries that were all within the one spot, 400 or 500-mile radius: Russia, Poland, Germany, and then Hungary, which is remarkable when you think about those countries and how, what happened in history as we move backwards and forwards because of the idea, like you just mentioned. You mentioned how they were involved in Kabbalistics. There's a lot of it turns out a lot of the early stars of the early screen were sons and daughters of what's called cantors. Cantors are liturgical, like rabbis. They're part of the...
Well, they're the ones that lead the service in musical prayer.
Exactly. They lead the service in musical prayer. Thank you. So what is that? Again, sound vibration, frequency, alteration of consciousness, leading a prayer through chanting of Hebrew. And these are the fathers and grandfathers of some of the early pop stars that started Hollywood, so it's just remarkable when you think about it. And then, of course, if you look at the works on Red Ice Radio, I know a lot of people are turned off by Red Ice Radio because they're very focused in their, the defense of white culture. But the fact of the matter is that they have done a lot of research and shown how, like, even those Nazi newsreels of them burning books and films were from, like, pornography, a lot of it was, and, like, really bad books that were like anti everything. They were like chaotic anarchism, like to the point of like almost what would be considered satanic in our culture. But these were not necessarily just great works of literature that the Nazis were burning. I'm not trying to be an apologist for the Nazis here, but my point is that Berlin at that time, and the rise of National Socialism, fascism in Germany, was like almost exclusively at that point the entertainment industry of that cultural center.
And we'll be back right after this on Be Brave Radio here on the Logos Radio Network. And welcome back to Be Brave Radio with John Bush, Leland Freeman, and Elizabeth Egan Everett, and our special guest, Frater X and Chris Nettedall from the Crypto Show. We got them for one more segment, and just so much stuff to just go over. Finishing up what Frater was, how Frater finished up his last sentence before he had to go to break, as well as this false feminist narrative by Lena Dunham other militant feminists that are more divisive than unifying. So, Frater, take it away with what you were saying before you had to go to break.
The way to bottom line what I was saying before we went to go to break was that it's easy to pick a target and pick on a group and say, it's them, they're the ones, the bad guys, who slander, the outsiders, let's get them, But in fact, I'm not trying to pick on Jews or Jewish culture or any of that. All we can do, though, we can say, bottom line here is that some Jewish people developed systems of understanding the universe and consciousness that we call Kabbalah and mysticism that they developed. A good, useful toolbox for manipulating consciousness. It wasn't necessarily done for evil reasons. It was a useful toolbox. And that was co-opted. A long, long time ago, it was chosen as a useful toolbox, a useful means to control consciousness. And that's what happened.
And I'm glad you brought that up, too, because it's not all Jews that benefit from this. I mean, for example, I haven't benefited from this at all.
Right. It's been co-opted by a group of oligarchs, bloodline oligarchs who are part of a family. They're not part of a race. They're part of a family, everyone. That's why they're all related, All the leaders of the world are related, and they're all related like the royal crowns of England and Europe, because they're part of a big family. Species, maybe, some species, I don't know. But what I know is that they're not exclusively Jewish or white or black or male or female. They're all that, and then some, and the fact of the matter is that's not the separating distinction. But, moving forward from that, this time is, it's a quickening, ladies and gentlemen. We are being assaulted on every level, every direction. There's so much information out there. We could spend 10 hours. Mark Passio right now is doing a talk on the East Coast. It's like a 9-hour talk on some of the same subjects that we're discussing right here. He's breaking it down in his signature fashion. Freeman Fly and Jamie Henshaw over at Weird Stuff Magazine, they're doing the same thing. FreemanTV.com. Hours and hours and hours decoding Hollywood mind control, decoding the creation of our counterculture. My show, The Middle Chamber on American Freedom Radio, which I'm going to be coming back on probably in another month following Jordan Maxwell on Saturday nights again.
And the fact that you've also been on Clyde Lewis's Ground Zero, which is nationally syndicated across the country as well.
Yeah, Clyde Lewis, Ground Zero, Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, Red Eyes Radio. We've talked. We're all these shows are the great. I mean, anybody who's out there, if you want to check my podcast on Stitcher.com and all those other shows I just mentioned, they're all on Stitcher too. And I hope you guys get an RSS link to Stitcher as well. It's a great way to continue to spread the message that you're putting out there. This is a sonic revolution, everybody. We're involved. Sound waves, voices, words. The same thing that created the universe can create can fight a revolution, and that's what we're involved in. It has to be a revolution. We have to revolve. We have to turn this around. We have to put our species back on track, ladies and gentlemen. We are all under the global enchantment. I do not possess full realization. I feel like I'm somebody who's like in the blind, the one-eyed man is king. You know what I mean? Like I have one eye. And, the funny thing is about the one eye, here's a perfect example about the co-opting and bastardizing of true wisdom. The all-seeing eye. It's always been the image of evil now, the Illuminati. My 9-year-old son's like, the Illuminati, when he sees the all-seeing eye, right? But guess what? One eye in occult tradition, in Hermetic tradition, inward, one eye signifies the inward eye, the eye that looks within for self-realization. You see what I'm saying? So
isn't it also the woodshot, which is the right and the left hemispheres combined together to go into the third eye, which is the pineal gland? Isn't it significant of that?
Again, that's turning within. The pineal gland is encased within the mind. It's inside the brain case. You're turning within for that wisdom. You're looking within. Odin, the god, the king, the high god of the gods of the Norse myth, he was a one-eyed god. He was a one-eyed guy. He got pecked out by a crow. That one eye signifies that he also possessed inner wisdom as well as outer wisdom. So this.
What is evil though? The one-armed man, because he killed my wife. Sorry, fugitive reference. Anyways,
which one? The original or the remake with Harrison Ford?
Sorry, totally threw that off. I was hoping that would go better than it did. Anyway.
We can't hold it for the soundtrack.
Yeah. Okay, so wait.
But anyway, no, that's a great point, though, how some of the symbolism has been co-opted. And as Frater mentioned, Kabbalah and some of these other things are just sort of neutral tools that do have real power and do work. It's a question of how you use them. And I want to make it clear too. When I brought up Kabbalistic Jews in Hollywood, I meant specifically a small handful of elites having nothing to do with Judaism or Jews at large, just about how these people are all brotherhoods of dark occultism that they use to control us.
Such as Madonna?
Yeah, exactly. She's probably the queen of it all.
Well, and she was ISIS on her mega ritual a couple years ago with the Super Bowl. Yeah. And then we had the Scarlet Woman, Aleister Crowley's Lust tarot card with Katy Perry. So who do we think with Beyonce tomorrow? She's going to show up. She's often does ISIS.
Oh, yeah. What do you think about the Super Bowl tomorrow, Frater?
What was the question?
Just what do you considering the symbolism and ritual of the previous Super Bowls, especially with Isis and the Divine Feminine? What do you have any expectations or ideas about tomorrow's Super Bowl halftime?
No, I think we're going to see more of the same. And, the bottom line is it's the continuation of the defilement of the sacred feminine, because all of these powerful pop culture diva type women, they possess, so much raw sexual energy. They're projecting that. And it's the step and fetch it type pandering to the man mentality that is really show business, the tap dancing, step and fetch it, pander to the man, throw me a nickel, I'm here to perform. I'm just like I'm a diversion, really. I'm a jester in the court. And the reality is that whatever the specifics, I know Beyonce, listen, whether or not Beyonce and Jay-Z and all these people are practicing occultists or Kabbalists, right? They know a good thing. And a good thing right now is creating controversy by using these symbols that everyone is aware of. It's controlled opposition, too. I know, listen, everybody listening, there are so many books out there for free online that you can download, and so many different papers that talk and explain it all. There's one book out there called Changing Images of Man. It was put out by the Stanford Research Institute in the 70s. In this book, they said the best way to take control of the mass consciousness of the American people is to inject Masonic and Egyptian iconography into pop culture to corral them, to shepherd them, to lead them in the direction we want them to go, which is the opposite direction of where they're trending, where they're heading, the Great Awakening that was going to be 2000 had they not led us down the road to 9/11. I mean, this is the bottom line. 9/11 had to happen because we were going to awaken as a species in 2000.
Wow.
It was big time. It had to happen to change that.
Weren't we going to awaken in 95 if it wasn't for Oklahoma City?
Well, there you go again. Once again, maybe so, but I'm just talking about this one report that was put out by the government that had the Rand Corporation involved. It had Joseph Campbell involved, and had a whole bunch of other big brains in the think tanks of America in the early 70s, and they all contributed their insight. And the conclusion, what I just described to you, was in like a little appendix way at the back of the book. They were like, by the way, here's a couple things we could do to change things. So it was trying to be like, this isn't really our main goal of the book. But in fact, if you're looking in the appendix, you'll find here's a recipe, here's a game plan, here's what we should do, to stop this. And it's because they said it was going to throw everything off, all established convention, all the churches, the social organizations, and all the things which had already suffered from the 60s, from the rise of the counterculture. They saw it as continuing. They couldn't stop the trend. It's like LSD and mushrooms and all these things are a great diversion, but guess what? They also, law of unintended consequences, will actually awaken some people.
Yes.
And if they band together, we might have a problem.
I think that's what's happening right now, which is why I think we're going to see some black swans this year, is because a lot of people are starting to really open up and become aware of all these other levels. They're starting to do their inner work, of their shadow work, working with their unconscious, unmet situations, past traumas. This PTSD is going to start to get healed if something isn't done by the elites to shut it down. And so I think we're heading for some important, crazy times, huh?
I agree, but it's scary.
And we got a minute left. You got closing thoughts for us, Frater X and Chris Nettedal, the Crypto Show?
My closing thought is the same as it always is. Creative expression. Resist non-compliance through artistic and creative expression. Find your luminous epinoia, which the Greeks called that creative visualization within. Find that within yourself, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to express yourself, because this is what we got. This is what we got right now. This is our time. Everyone needs to wake up and to stand up for yourselves. Now, I'm not advising weapons or nothing like that, but just be yourself.
And I just want to say, Frater X, thanks for being on Be Brave Radio, and thank you, Leland, for letting me come on.
Absolutely.
I am Chris from The Crypto Show, thecryptoshow.com, every Sunday, Wednesday, 8 to 10 p.m. Check it out.
Here on the Logos Radio Network. And Frater, well, how do people get in touch with you?
You can look for me on fraterx.blogspot.com, middlechamberfx.wordpress.com, Saturday nights on American Freedom Radio, 9 p.m.
All right, Frater, thank you for joining us on Be Brave Radio. Joining us in the third hour is Dr. Laura Presley to talk about election integrity. This is Be Brave Radio here on the Logos Radio Network. We will be back after this short news break. Stay tuned.